So I welcome you to the last session of the International Youth Conference here in beautiful Kruševo. Now finally we have also all speakers on the stage, and I'm really looking forward into having a very good input and also very fruitful discussion afterwards. In this session we'll talk about sustainable ideas during the next hour, and first of all, I'd like to point out about the word sustainability. Sustainability itself is a very broad topic, which has grown. Its meanings have grown a lot especially in the last time. The topics are touching development, are touching economy, human resources, and but also not to forget nature, which is especially important for me now, speaking as a biologist. In a sense, dealing with these issues ensures that this world where we as humans are living in continues to stay worth living in and worth living for. Now we have different approaches to solving also these issues. In this panel we are gonna see some of them, like a very small fraction of it, but it is still very, very interesting. Some approaches, they are nowadays very innovative. Some approaches, they have been common knowledge throughout history, throughout humankind history, but they have gotten lost. And now we are slowly, we are retrieving some of them, which is also good to see. Some of these approaches, they are based on a personal level, on every individual's level, and some also can be or should be applied on a social level. We've got now three of these approaches been shown here, and we will see if these approaches can be also for sustainability, for our future, basically. So I would like to welcome the minister here in Macedonia for labor and social policy, Ms. Mila Carovska. Am I saying it right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I have to say, she was the founder of the Platform for Poverty, which she is actually not part anymore of, but still it is a platform that all projects about poverty in Macedonia are based on. So it had actually a big impact and influence on the policies, also about now again from poverty to what we can see then to also to sustainable ideas for the society. I don't want to spoil any more about this. I think you can maybe present yourself and a bit more detail, and then you just have the stage. Thank you.
How many minutes I have? 5?
10, 15.
Okay. Okay. Hi to everybody. Thank you for inviting me. It's okay with this, or maybe in the front. Thank you for inviting me at this conference, because it's very important for me to speak in front of so many young people, but also I feel myself very, very young. I'm also young for the minister, but I think the civil society mindset and all this enthusiasm that we have in the civil society organizations, I think that we can introduce now in the government, and there is a very big opportunity for the civil societies in Macedonia, but also for us as a young people to say that we can lead the country better than before. I'm really happy to say that I was one of the founders of Anti-Poverty Platform in Macedonia, and we became a full member of European Anti-Poverty Platform in that time, in 2011, 2012. And now there is a progress in this platform, and they are very active, and I'm very happy. But now, as the Minister of Labor and Social Policy, I think that we need to talk more about the sustainable policies that will take care for the young people in Macedonia. There is not a lot of policies, and I find one research that says that 80% of the young people that are in the higher education, some of them in high school, some of them in the university, says that they need to left the country. They need to go abroad. That is very, it's a shock for me. This is not something that we didn't know before, but now when you have a statistic, it's a very terrible thing. And that's why we, as a new government, start to talk about the Youth Guarantee Fund. That is very expensive measure, but I find that in Germany and Austria, this is something that's functioning. And there is a specific system of education, as a dual system of education in high school in Austria. And we get a meeting last week with their employment agency and our employment agency, and we look how we can find sustainable way to implement the active Youth Guarantee Fund in Macedonia. What does mean? That we absolutely will be focused on reallocate more money for employment of young people in Macedonia to how to say, to connect education, process of education and vocational trainings with the real market or the needs of the labor market in Macedonia. And the last thing that is very important for us is to create a sustainable partnership in between the civil society organizations, government, but also the private sector in Macedonia. There is a companies that are somehow they're successful in this small market, but again they are not willing to invest in the young people, or they are not willing to invest in the society. And we think that this needs to change, because if they need a really motivated young people to participate in their companies or to be educated and after that employed, they need to invest in these young people in Macedonia. And that's why in the active measures for employment, we done in the last 3 months the revision of the operational plan for employment, active measures for employment 2017. We reallocate 2 million euros more to activate young people to 29 years. We think a lot, where is the limit? Some of the young people say that we need to have a limit 33 years. Some of them that we need to go to the 25 years. But we decide that we will go in middle, that there is no 25, but it's not a 33 years, but because it's not a young people, youth are not after the 30 years, but okay, we just clearly said that 29 years it's okay. And all measures that are new in this revision plan are connected with the young people to 29 years. It's important to say that we allocate grants for the young people that wants to establish their startup or company, 10,000 euros. That is something new, and maybe it's not enough, because it's okay for a first year to have a good company somehow, to have a good startup. And also we need to support, or with this plan we already support the companies that will employ young people to 29 years, and they will receive 2,500 euros per person. But they can employ not more than 5 people to 29, and they can use 12,000 euros from the government. But something that is also important is that NGOs now have, or civil society organizations have an opportunity to use these active measures for employment. This means that every organization in this moment that can provide money from the donors, also they can mix money with the governmental money, and to have more sustainable jobs in the future. If you are already informed about our activation programs in Macedonia, you will find that just the active, kako je barateli, ima neko makedonec tuka? Barateli na rabota. Just the active seekers of employment are allowed to use the money from the government the previous period. Now we offer the money for also the people that are not active seekers. Most of the young people in Macedonia are not active seekers. They are active in the NGOs, grey market, they have just some contributions from the companies, but it's not a regular job. And now all these people can apply for these active measures. That is something new and we think more sustainable, because if you target just active seekers and passive you are not targeting, this means that you miss half of the people that are unemployed in Macedonia, especially young people. Because I don't believe in the system till I was pregnant. I said there is no, I will not pay contribution to the pension fund and health fund. There is no need to go in the agency for employment, because we are young, we are NGO activists, and the money are enough in our life. And I was passive seeker of job a very long time, and I was very active. Maybe you will not say that I was 10 years in the NGO sector, very active, and everybody thinks that I'm employed. But when you see in the agency, I was not employed. I paid privately my life and health insurance. But now I give opportunity for every young person to also apply for these measures, because they are mostly passive in our system. Also, there is a lot of education and vocational trainings for young people, but I think that somehow still in 2017 they will not be fully coordinated with the labor market and the companies, the real need of the companies. But for 2018, we are just start to develop a new plan for 2018 in support of UN agency in Macedonia and Austrian government, and definitely to connect the education system, vocational trainings with the needs of the business companies in Macedonia. But something that we think that is missing still, and we will invest in this, is to tracking young person from the high school and after. This means that that our statistic and our database will be connected directly with the high schools electronic system, and when the person is the last year of high school, they will already be targeted by the employment agency to find a way how these people or young person can be choose to go in the education, in the further education. This mean university, or they can receive some vocational training after the high school, or maybe we can offer employment directly in one company. Depends of the interest of and capacities of the young people. In Macedonia. I think that if we integrate this system as an electronic one, we think that definitely we will have a better targeting of young people in Macedonia, but also to improve or to reduce unemployment in Macedonia. Because if you know, probably you know the statistic in Macedonia, 50% of the young people are unemployed. This is very awful. Yeah, thank you. If you have any questions after that, I'm here to respond to you.
Hello. Thank you for your talk. Especially for me, it was interesting to hear about also this program, Youth Guarantee. I don't know how many of the young leaders here have heard about this before, but I think this is one way to try to solve different issues that not only Macedonia has, but also the other countries in this region have. So it might be also useful for other countries, for the students, for the people in the other countries. For the questions, we will have all the talks, and then in the end we will have a plenary session. Next speaker is going to be Mr. Ian Goldberg, the Goldring. I'm really sorry, got like the ring, Goldberg. He is the director of the Project Works Association. And he is also a consultant for local development, employment, and inclusion in EU countries, but also in the Eastern countries. And so he has also some ideas on long-term issues and how to address them, also for sustainable long-term future.
Okay. Hello? Yeah. This works? This is what works? I click it? Okay. Let's see if I can do this technology here. Okay, this is me, so if you ever want to find out more about what I do, it's all on the website and so on. Now, here we go. Now, of course, the issue of employment and development is pretty much an enormous issue, and I was at pains to think, well, what aspects should I talk about? And the minister brought up some, pretty reasonable points. And I was trying to think, what could I contribute? Also, I was being asked to talk about this idea of sustainability, which is the long term, so I chose to focus on this. So I'm going to begin with a focus on some long-term issues of unemployment, not so much as opposed to the immediate sense of that. I'm going to make 2 recommendations, just 2, and then I'm going to talk about some approaches and tools which would be relevant to making those recommendations implementable. And then finally, I'm going to close with an example I think is fairly good from Romania, where they're applying some of these principles and it's working pretty well. Okay, long-term impacts. Well, if we're talking about unemployment, of course everyone knows, I think intuitively, why it's bad to be unemployed, and I won't explain that. I'll assume you understand that. There's something in the field of economics called hysteresis. In the non-specialized press, you'd see the term scarring. Hysteresis is, if you're interested to look at it further, all the academic research is under this concept. It's not about unemployment per se, it's about after unemployment. It's about the long-term damage that's done by extensive periods of unemployment, particularly if you're talking about during a formative period of someone's life, i.e. youth unemployment, and what those effects are after and the rest of the life of this person. So the effects on the people themselves have a variety of natures. You see, in terms of their future employment prospects, their future income and economic conditions and so forth, often in terms of health, we talk about more likelihood of having health, be it health problems, be it of physical or mental nature, greater likelihood of substance abuse, it's a long, ugly, etc., more likely to have relationship problems, mistrust, disengagement with society. Also, we talk about the skills because they're not using their skills and so on for a long time. When they go back to the labor market, these skills are not as strong as they had been before this extended period of unemployment. So we talk about damage in terms of loss or erosion of skills, be it specific skills, so if you study computer programming or dentistry or whatever, those kinds of things. And also what you might know, generic skills, which are skills that you use for pretty much anything. So things like time management or problem solving or interacting with other people in a team and things like that, which are pretty much everything. So that's the damage that it does on people. And then if we're talking about society as a whole, in general, what's the impact on society? Well, in sort of social terms, we would have the impact of having all these people who are disaffected, disengaged, feeling less connected with society. Isolation is a serious problem that comes from this. If we're looking at the material side of things, you see a significant impact on the economics of a country, the productive potential of a country, because you've had this degrading in the quality or effectiveness of the labor market. You see problems for public revenues because money is going out because you're spending more money on social benefits and things like that, but also less money is coming in because if people are working below their long-term potential, they're making less money, therefore they're paying less money in taxes. So the potential for the state to get revenues is lessened. And of course, so that has impacts on the competitiveness of the country and the attractiveness of a place in terms of investment because you have a less attractive labor market to offer and so on and so forth. Now, so this is the sort of the nasty, but we're talking about it in the long-term impact, not so much during the unemployment, which you probably already understand, but the long-term effects after. So that's the sustainable issue. Now that's hysteresis. So what would be what you're supposed to do about it? Anti-hysteresis. Well, essentially what we're talking about is a kind of trauma, more or less. It's a traumatic experience, in this case unemployment. So the basic idea, if you want to eliminate or reduce this damage, is you want to reverse the experience of the trauma. Yeah? So if we're saying like a typical problem with unemployment is it leads to people being very isolated. They have less friends, for example. Yeah? So you want to generate experiences, activities which do the reverse, that have them having more connection with people, interacting with more people, the sort of the flip of that experience. If you're talking about the damage being done to them in terms of they're not using their skills, so these skills are degraded bit by bit, then you want to find ways to get them to use these skills. Okay? So that's the sort of nugget of the idea. You want to find sort of reverse experiences to these damaging stimuli. Okay. Now, another major factor that happens a lot, and this is really fundamental, I don't think it's Macedonia, I found this all the time. When you talk about measures or actions to deal with employment or unemployment issues, you have to define, are we talking about supply or demand issues on the labor market? What this means, supply, it's really basic. Supply is when you have jobs, but say the people who are out there don't have the necessary characteristics for these jobs. So the kinds of measures you do are you give them training or retraining, you try and develop their skills, you might give them like coaching sessions on how to do a CV better, how to do a job interview, these kinds of things, yeah? Now, if you're talking about a demand problem, that's when you have less jobs than there are people who want to work. It's a very different problem, yeah? In this case, what you're talking about is generating jobs. So you want growth, you want to repair the economy, grow the economy, and this kind of thing. There's a kind of a danger and confusion of these two. Because in a demand problem situation, it's where you might have, say, a job opening and 200 people apply, okay? Now, someone's going to get the job, okay, that's good, but then the day after you have 199 people who don't have a job, right? Now, if you're talking in terms of a discourse of supply, well then, you say, well, these people, well, they've done everything they're supposed to do. If it's a guy, he wore a tie to the interview and combed his hair and things like that, but they still didn't get a job. But it's not because they didn't have a good attitude or they didn't have a positive approach. It's because there's only one job for 200 people, yeah? Which is bad enough. But then you get the risk of this becoming a kind of blaming thing. There's some kind of internal inadequacy in the person. And it's not that. It's another situation. So addressing either of these things, but particularly the demand situation, is a thing that you obviously do with policy and the kind of things she's talking about. And I agreed with everything she said. It seemed reasonable, yeah? But there's an issue. This takes a certain amount of time. But now this is Keynes. He's a famous economist. He's the father of the modern field of economics. And this is one of my favorite quotes by him. He says, in the long run, we're all dead. Argue with that. Now, what did he mean by this? He wasn't a particularly morbid person, and he wasn't making an argument against thinking in the long term or anything like that. No, not at all. The point he's making is that when you're conducting policy and taking action, you need to have a combination of thinking and approaches that deal with these long-term issues that you have to address because it's essential. But at the same time, the short term is not something you ignore. Like, I'm sure at some point you've all seen someone say, yes, there's this problem, but you know, there's this thing happening in the long term, this will disappear because the trend is for this to go away, yeah? The implication being not to worry about it. And the point he was making is that the short term is in its own way equally important or extremely important. So what should you be doing about these sort of short-term things? Well, I put together 2 recommendations that I thought might be worth bringing up, particularly because they're not the kind of thing that are often shared at these kinds of events. The first one is to improve the experience of unemployment. And I wanted that to sound counterintuitive, to improve the experience of unemployment. Why am I saying that? Not to make unemployment attractive, obviously, but to address what I was explaining about this problem of hysteresis. It's a damage. So, of course, you don't want damage. You want to eliminate or at least reduce this damage. So you want to generate activities that have this palliative function, like what I was saying before about activities where people who are isolated through unemployment are coming into contact with other people, maybe where you have a barter system where they can use their skills, maybe not for money, but I cut your hair and you do this for me, or they have these exchange systems for skills and services, some creative way of keeping them active so this damage is not as bad as it could be at least, yeah? And then the second thing is to help migration, which sounds strange, i.e. to make migration a successful experience, not an experience of defeat. This means roughly, in terms of preparing the people who are going to be doing this to better face this challenge, and of course to liaise with the organizations and people who will be receiving them, so maybe potential employers who are out there and so on. Now, this might seem somewhat counterintuitive in terms of the normal discussion we're having, and it is, because there's this contrast between what you're doing for the long term, the midterm, and the short term. In these issues I'm making, youth work, which is, I'm sort of playing to the audience here, youth work is extremely important in making these things happen, particularly with the first section, yeah? Because, I mean, the kind of activities, non-formal learning and so on, that would create these experiences and activities are particularly given to the youth work sector. And, of course, partnership, and in anything in life you want to do, you need partners. But particularly if we're talking about liaising with other actors, we need to have a successful approach to partnership. Now, for this part of the presentation, I thought I'd do a little bit of storytelling. This is a document from my grandmother when she migrated to Canada from Ireland in 1923. And the interesting thing about this document, or one of them, is this part here was $10. How it worked back then, to get into the country, you had to have a boat ticket. You got on a boat, and you had to have $10 on your person to be allowed into the country. And they had other things about you had to not have tuberculosis. And that was it. That was the whole immigration plan. It was pretty brutal. So you arrive there, they check you, no tuberculosis, $10, good luck. That was it. Now, later on today, like I have a daughter of my own, and if she had to go abroad, maybe for work or something, I would certainly want her to go to do this in a much better circumstance. This is an extremely brutal circumstance, yeah? And I'm sure all of you would feel the same way about people that you know or care about, possibly even yourselves in some moment. So, I'll carry on with this story just to make it a narrative. 2 generations, along comes me. I'm this young Canadian university student, and I go off to London as part of my studies in university, yeah? And I meet the Irish ambassador there. Now, at this time, Ireland is still a country of immigrants, people leaving the country. But by this time, they were more educated. Like my grandmother, she was the first female in the family who could read or write. Her own mother couldn't write her own name. So at this time, what you saw later on in Ireland, you had a university class graduating, and within about 6 months of the graduation, about half of them would have left the country, going typically to the US, Canada, Australia, and other places like that. And the other half stayed, and more or less they ended up running the country. Yeah? And at the time, speaking to the ambassador, this was the policy of the government, because the attitude was that if the country was unable to provide them with sufficient opportunity in their own country, the very least they could do was equip them to succeed in this migration going abroad. This was seen as a logical thing and a moral imperative because, of course, you're speaking about your own citizens and ultimately your own children. So what happened with this story, as time went by, this economic slump of about 800 years or so began to lighten up in Ireland. So you saw in the late 90s the economy getting better, and the graduates from university didn't leave the country, and you had some of the ones who had left were coming back. And they were not only coming back, they would bring certain skills with them, experience, and in some cases money for investment. Such that now, if you look at Irish national development strategies, using the sort of asset of these immigrants abroad as investors, but also ambassadors for investment and so on, it's become part of how they look at the national development. And an interesting thing you've been seeing about this in the Eastern European countries in the EU is roughly the same pattern has begun to manifest itself. Of course, this took a hit during the economic crisis around 2008 and so forth, but you see the same tendency starting to reassert itself now. And not only that, but you're seeing a similar pattern happening in many of the Eastern European countries. This is an article from a recent issue of The Economist, and you see this in Slovakia, the Czech Republic, many of the Baltic countries and so on, where people are doing the same thing that the Irish did. They went away, they work, some stay, get married and have kids, have a mortgage, and some come back and they've done MBA studies or something, and the same thing is happening in many of these countries that happened and is still happening in Ireland. So, this is the idea. I'm saying that you want to encourage this experience of immigration, particularly when it's going to be inevitable anyway. So what would be, sort of how do you make this happen, this sort of short-term implementation of these plans? Well, if you're going to do this, you're going to have a successful means of working with stakeholders. These are these various terms that are very popular in all these sort of planning, managerial contexts. This is one that the Commission particularly likes now. It's one of these ones that's very difficult to get out of the mouth, I find. Cross-sectorial partnership, that's one that you talk a lot about if you're filling out an application for European Commission funding. Or engagement, outreach, that kind of thing. These are these sort of terms that we talk about now in engaging with stakeholders. And that's great, that's wonderful, but how do you really do that? Are you familiar with something called stakeholder analysis? Anyone ever do that? Anyone? Can you go? Anyone? Anyone? Don't be shy. Anyone? Nothing? Any of you? Who? Over there? Oh, whoa! Anyone over here? No? Okay, well, because I was talking with what should I present for them and so on, I thought, well, this is, if we're going to talk about activities that require development of partnership-based activities and so on, this is the first step you have to do. And if you're going to do it any kind of effective way, you need to have a structured, tested approach to this, yeah? Basically, the idea, who does stakeholder analysis? It was you? Yeah? You do it, but do you know what it is? What is it? What is it? Any of you? Whoever thinks they actually know what it is. What is it? But maybe he talks too much. You can say it quick.
When we were developing the organization and strategic plan for developing of Youth Alliance Khrushchev, we made a stakeholder analysis of Youth Alliance Khrushchev stakeholder and how, in general, the relationship between Youth Alliance and the stakeholders of Youth Alliance. We created this kind of analysis.
So what would you do? Like find out who's relevant to what you're trying to do and what possible roles they would play in this kind of thing? Yeah.
Yes.
That's basically it. So how would they come into the question? What you want from them? You see this sometimes in exercises where people talk about developing partnerships and they talk about how they're going to build it, but not what they want from it. Is there something else you had clever to... I see that look on your face like you got something clever in your mind. What is it? Something? You. Right in the middle. You had something to say. You looked like you had something clever to add. Just make it quick. Yeah.
Hello. The kind of stakeholder analysis that we use in Civica does not just look on, I'm not saying that you're saying that, but it's not just looking at parties that can, be beneficial to your aim. It also looks at opponents, so parties that can destruct your aim. To take them into account and to try to make them neutral or turn them around to make them... but that's the only...
That's going to come. That's good.
That's clever, though. It's clever.
I agree, because that's what I do. So I'm in favor. Okay. So what I thought I'd present, because I don't really have a large understanding of what you've done previously, so I was trying to think what might be of interest. So I thought I'd bring this tool in. Now this is the tool I often build an entire workshop around, so I'm just going to skim over and give you an idea of how it works, and then later it'll be in the material, so if you want to use it, you can come back and read it in greater depth. If you read it, it's fairly self-explanatory, so if I just skim over now, don't worry too much. Now, it's called a matrix exercise, and the idea is to move you from a thinking about stakeholder analysis in a sort of general way to making it a structured process. The idea being that the more it's structured, the more it'll be an effective process. So this is the idea. You take these tools. First, you look at who the different stakeholders are in relation to your issue, what their interest is in relation to it, the kind of impact they have on it, and that ties in with what he was saying, because you can have the impact in something positive, like maybe they can give you resources, be it monetary or some other kind of resource, or help you in some aspect. It can also be negative. For example, you might have certain organizations or individuals who will be antagonistic or will block this thing you're trying to do unless they feel that they've been part of the process of consultation on it, that they were in the loop. And so basically it's so that they don't act against you, so you involve them in a certain way. It can also be at different parts, like you might have actors who can maybe help you with this entire process you're trying to do. Others might come in really more at the beginning or at the end. Like you might have one actor or individual who maybe can help you get the support of, maybe you want to get, I don't know, funding from a bank. You want to get some CSR funding from some bank, and then you know someone who can help you achieve this, and once they've done that, that's basically all they're going to do. So their role is maybe more at the beginning, where the bank might be through the whole relationship, just to improvise an example, okay? And then you look at the relative prioritization, because of course all stakeholders are not made equal, so in terms of the priority of these different stakeholders, how much time and effort do you put into each one? And then you work out the different sort of factors in obtaining their support, what their interests are, so how do you speak to them to gain their interest and approach them. The idea being that a lot of this is stuff that you kind of know intuitively, and when you see this stuff written down in the process, it always looks like something you already knew, but that you probably would not have said like that if you hadn't written it down and gone through this whole process. So basically it's an argument for doing something in a structured way with a tool that works. Now, this is an example from a project I did once to do with overqualified migrants. I don't know if any of you know what overqualification. Overqualification is like you have something like someone has a degree in advanced mathematics and he's working as a cleaner or something like that. So they're working but well below what the level they could be. So we were doing a project on overqualified migrants in the EU, yeah? So we went down, we had some of the stakeholders, the migrants themselves, the employers, various factors, and we worked out like the interests of these different parties, how they could affect it, some of like in the positive or the negative way, like what he was talking about. And relative priority, these are all the number ones at the beginning, and then the list goes on. And then some of the sort of keys to what would it be to obtaining the kind of support we wanted, how would we go about doing this. And you would do this as a kind of a group exercise, hopefully, as a team, yeah? And the list goes on. Of course, I'm not going to go through it, but it's the kind of, if you read it later, it's fairly self-explanatory. It's not overly complicated, yeah? The point being, you have this structured approach. Now, the second part of this is you develop on the basis of this stuff you work out an approach for going to these people and or organizations, yeah? So what we worked out here, we won't read it all, but this had sort of 4 areas. You have, on one level, you have the short-term and long-term arguments, or the kind of buttons you're trying to push to get their involvement in this. And of course, you look at these people in their logic as organizations and as individuals, because you have both at the same time. Much like if you're trying to get an organization to participate in this event here, you would have, in terms of what the body, the organization wants, but also the individual, maybe why would they want to be here networking with you and Kruševo and things like that. So again, these are things that when they're written down, you'll know. But it's, if you go through the process of articulating it in a structured way, you'll have a much more articulate, much more effective chance of carrying this out successfully. Yeah? Now, I'll go through this quickly. If we're talking about developing partnership, having gone through this exercise to approach them, you have different models of partnership. There is no one model of how to do it. It's one of those things where it kind of depends on each situation. The only thing that would be the recommendation is that you think about this trade-off at the beginning, because whatever kind of model of partnership you adopt, there are always disadvantages and advantages to how you do it. And the main thing is you can never get around that. So for you to decide consciously on what trade-off is the right one for you. What you don't want to do is sort of get into this kind of trade-off without realizing it's a trade-off, that 8 months later you realize you did this and you should have thought about it. The main point here is that you, at the beginning of establishing this partnership, you go through with these people how you want this partnership to be, how you want it to run, what are the main factors to consider. So at least you have a conscious decision. And even if you adapt it later on, it's part of a conscious thing instead of being dragged along by something you hadn't considered, which happens more often than you probably would imagine. Okay? So some of these factors to consider. The degree of obligation, is it binding, like it's contractual, they have to do it no matter what, even if they don't want to? Is it non-binding, so it's all very free and voluntary? Or some sort of balance point between them, which is usually what people do. Now, each of these has its a lot of advantages and disadvantages, and will depend on sort of what your circumstance is. You just have to work out what's right for you. And it's a kind of a mobile thing that never stops. In each moment, it's always you having to adapt to what you're at. So these are just, it just sort of breaks down what the different advantages are. You can read it later if you want. One thing you want here is to have, and this is always a bit of a dilemma. On one hand, to make these kind of partnership structures work, you need a kind of, at the core, a certain agility, where there's a fairly compact team, so it's fairly easy to take action and make decisions, so that you don't have this kind of large sort of parliamentary process where, you know, it takes forever to talk about everything or make a decision, and it's this sprawling kind of thing. So that's an argument for sort of compacting the structure. But then you have the problem, the more you compact something, the more you're at risk of excluding potentially important or necessary actors who need to be involved in one way or another. And what's the answer? I don't have one. That's the answer. It's a permanent dilemma. So what you're trying to do is just sort of work out what the right balance point is for your situation. Good luck with that. There's no way, but at least if you're aware that this is what you're trying to do, you'll have a better chance of being at least reasonably successful. Yeah? And of course, you want to have a stable structure. These are sort of generic for everyone. You need to have a coordinator or some kind of face. If you have a partnership and we're all these people, but there's no one, like who do I go to if I want to somehow contact this partnership? There has to be some kind of a coordinator with a identifiable face that's the one you contact and go to. And this is often not thought of. The need to have provisions for dismantling it if and when the purpose of the thing is, maybe it's expanded or gets molded into something else, or the problem you're dealing with is changed nature or something. Yeah? This is often not considered. Any kind of, you know about this one, Plan B? You like that? Plan B good? Yeah, well, after Plan B. Okay? Yeah, I can only go so fast. So, any kind of like funding application you fill out for the commission will invariably oblige you to kind of identify in some form or like quadrant document graph thing your various stakeholders and how you're going to work on the basis of partnership and involvement of your stakeholders and all like that. And that's the ideal thing that in theory you always do, but of course that's not always possible. For one reason or other, maybe time might be a problem. I mean, a good example, a bit extreme, would be like all these hurricanes that you're seeing happening in the States and the Caribbean right now. Now, if you're having to deal with that, you're not going to sit down and let's have a stakeholder consultation process. That would be insane, right? So that's kind of an extreme example. But there are other reasons why, this process might not be, for in one occasion, really the thing to do. The next best thing is to have a kind of coordinating figure who maybe doesn't make a partnership, but has the role of going amongst these different actors, and that person in his or her mind can put together a kind of complete picture based on the different fragments that these different actors from their angles can feed into. And it's sort of the next best thing. And sometimes you have to go with, what you can do. There's an expression in English that I'm very fond of. It's the perfect is the enemy of the good. What's plan C? I got to know. We'll ask him. He's the boss.
Actually, the questions are in the end.
Yeah.
Is that?
You got a short one?
Yeah, my question is actually when we will be able to take some notes and to convert it into discussion, because
At the end.
yeah, we
At
are,
the end. At the end.
Yeah,
At
sure.
the end. Yeah, gotta go. I got limited time. Okay. Okay. So the next question is evaluation. Well, that's the answer. I'm sorry. The evaluation of your partnership. Two questions. Why do you want to evaluate your partnership? One, so that it works better, so that you do it better and you're having an ongoing loop of improving how you're doing whatever it is you're doing. And the second main thing is issues of accountability. First, this can be of like a democratic nature, a moral nature. It can also be of a financing nature. If you're trying to get support for this thing that you're trying to do, you want to demonstrate to people that this thing that you're doing, that it's a valuable and good thing to do. And to do that, you have to have some system of demonstration indicators and so on that you can show for your thing. Now, these are some principles for a successful partnership that comes from the OECD research. I work a lot with them. I'm involved in the partnership they have for local economic development. And this is the kind of off-the-rack thing you can get. We won't go through it all now. But the point is that you have these tools that are set up. And if you want to get a partnership going, you can take these things pretty much off the rack and get up and running immediately. Now, what might happen is you might use these and over time, adapt them to your own needs. The thing is you can get these things and pretty much start immediately if you have these already pre-made things. This is an OECD checklist they use for evaluating your partnership. It can be used as an evaluation, but also as a tool for discussion amongst the partners. For example, you might take a checklist like this and use it as the agenda for a meeting you're having with your partner to give it a quick structure. And these are things that you might think of, but maybe you wouldn't. So you can have this and you have an immediate exercise that's good to go, and maybe as you use this, you think of things to add and adapt, and that's fine. But the thing is, with these pre-made exercises or tools that have already been researched, you can have a thing that allows you to get going right away. And that's the immediate value of it. So have a look at that later. One small thing that people often don't think about with evaluation, and this happens a lot, it's an expression in English that the tail wags the dog, that people begin to define their objectives, what they're going to do, by what allows for effective evaluation. So you adapt what you do so as you can fit with nice, neat indicators. And people kind of slide into it. But this is not what you want. For example, we're having this event today, and a very easy thing I could do as an indicator for this is you count how many people attended. So how many warm bodies are in the seats, right? And that's a nice, easy indicator. I can do it, and okay, right? But what do I know about that? Well, I know something. How many people were there? Now, I might be interested in knowing, I think where are you? Yeah, your question before, like, how will attending to this affect what you do, what you think after? Now, that's a very interesting question, yeah? What kind of impact will it have on your thinking and what you do after? That's a very interesting question, a very important question if I'm organizing an event like this. But it's much harder to know about, much harder to evaluate. But that's the answer I want to know. So that's just a thing to be aware of. Everything that's easy to evaluate isn't necessarily what you really want to know. This is the one that's kind of fun. Again, this is all from the OECD, this stuff, yeah? Where can partnerships go wrong? Now, they base this on all kinds of research, and I like it a lot because almost any person in this room, you read this, you're all going to think in your mind of some experience you've had of exactly this happening to you, yeah? So you'll read this and it'll help you, but it's a good tool to refer to really quickly when you're trying to, in an accelerated way, get a partnership up and running. The main thing about using these sorts of off-the-rack tools is that you don't want to reinvent the wheel. There are these tools that are available, and instead of you sweating it out somewhere and trying to think of how can I get this going, you can get these things, get going, and then later, in an iterative process, you want to adapt them, you can do that, and that'll be fine. Yeah? Now, this is where I'll get to an example I wanted to present to you to close. This is my most recent publication I did. Anyone, Salto Youth? Anyone out there know Salto? Salto? Hey, Salto, Salto, Salto. I work with them a lot, yeah, and this is this publication I did for them most recently. You can get, it's free, so don't be angry for self-promotion. You can get it for free. This is the Salto website, and this is where you can get a PDF of my own website. So this is, I'm going to show you a few cases from here. Well, I'm only going to show you one, actually, so it's not a few at all. What we have here, this was a publication about NEETs. Anyone know what NEETs are? What are NEETs? NEET, and who knows? Well, here, let me hear. What is it? Who knows? Hand up. What is it? You knew. What acronym? N. What does it stand for? Yeah, I won't argue. Yeah. Well, the E's you can flip. It can be education, employment, education, you know, whatever. Yeah, I don't want to be. Okay. So that's what this was about. The main thing about NEETs is it's a concept that's kind of fictional because people can end up in a situation like this for all kinds of different reasons. So what we wanted to do was to help people think through why, you know, what kinds of actions are appropriate for this. Really, all kinds of very different actions. Now here, I don't know, in Macedonia, which of these kinds of events or activities would be more pertinent to your situation? I don't know. I mean, you look at it and you tell me. I really don't know. I looked at a couple. There's one here at the top that I thought was an excellent practice from Estonia. And it was a practice that was addressing these small rural villages in Estonia that were suffering heavy depopulation, the kinds of towns where young people went away to study that never came back. And this one town, they turned this around mainly through a process of engaging young people in the decision-making processes of this local administration. And they had very good, very positive effects. And there are a lot of very interesting practices going on these days in Estonia. So shout out to Estonia. But I want to talk about this other second one here. This is an example I took from Romania, that they're doing a very interesting, very creative work. It's very possible with very low funds. It's called Ecoherbal. Okay. Now, it's a social enterprise. Do you know the difference between a charity, a social charity, and a social enterprise? Anyone know? Quick. Like a charity and an enterprise. They're similar in some ways, but different in others. Who knows? Well, I don't know. It's a random thing. I'm sorry. I pointed at her. Okay. Yeah, you want to add to it? That's your. I mean, you're right, but there's more to add. But you're not wrong. You wanted to add something? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but that's kind of like sustainability. I mean, you're right, but it's like one of those things that's like, yeah, it's sustainable, it's got value. Where? Oh, he's getting money. You got onto it. Okay. The key word is enterprise. Now, a charity, what you do is you do actions for some kind of good, like unemployed young people, the whales, whatever, right? Okay? And then how you finance is people give you money to do this good thing that you want to do, right? Okay? Social enterprise is roughly the same thing. You want to do some kind of social good to whatever cause is motivating you, okay? The difference being is that within the concept of it, you have some self-financing system, some kind of business model or proposition that finances it, okay? Now, this could be you're employing the people you want. I mean, there are lots of ways you could do that, right? But the point is you have a kind of business model to finance the thing internally, okay? And this is what they're doing here in this case in Romania. This is this town. They began it in here. This is an area in Romania near the border with Bulgaria. Basically, this is a poor place with very little opportunity where life is hard and people leave, okay? That's that kind of place. Now, they set up this organization here, Ecoherbal. The basic idea of it is, well, this is a very rural agricultural community, by the way, yeah? And they're producing fairly low-value stuff like cabbage and potatoes and what have you, okay? The idea is that you cultivate certain wildflowers, certain herbs, and like growing things that have a very high added value, but they have this value if you know how to produce them in the right way and process them. You have to do it a very certain way to maintain that value. And they only have the value if you have contact with the buyers for these things. The kinds of people you sell this to are like pharmaceutical companies who use them for certain chemical processes, cosmetic companies, people who make advanced like ointments and things. So there are things that have a very high added value per weight, but first you have to go through a very particular way of producing it, otherwise it doesn't have the value it could have, and you have to have contacts with these buyers. Like, for example, if I had a sack of this material, I wouldn't be able to do anything with it because I don't know. You have to have maybe some pharmaceutical company in Germany who buys this stuff, and I wouldn't know how to do that. And neither would these people in this little town in Romania. So these people, they came along, and the idea was to show them how to do this so they could make money and have jobs, okay? Now, what happened is they come to this town, and this is a town of people who've, through their life experience, on many occasions they've been lied to, they've been cheated, they've been robbed, and they have a very cynical, very mistrustful general attitude, okay? I'm not blaming them, but that's just how it was. So you get these people showing up. You've got this great idea, and you're going to make money to sell this stuff you never heard of to people you've never heard of, and all you have to do is what we tell you, okay? Well, no, it didn't work. So what they had to do was go through a process of working with their stakeholders. Now, this stakeholder process had a very internal and outside aspect. The outside is with these buyers, the kind of people who buy this very specific stuff that has a high value if you can get it to the people who want that sort of thing. Inside, what they did was work with like the obvious people you would work, like people who are involved with agricultural issues and things like that, but also people like the town doctor. Why? Because the town doctor was one of the few people all of them listened to. You also had the town priest, the mayor, the school teacher, people like this that were that in theory had nothing practically to do with this function they were going to do, but they were very important in terms of the community. I'm going to hold on. Yeah? And so this is what they did. They went speaking to these people and lots of time invested explaining how all this works with these people and how it would work. And then the first year what they did, of course, they had very few people who wanted to do it. You got to wait. I got to wait. I'm sorry. You got to wait. And so they began with a small group of early adopters, and then they went through the process, and then people saw that this thing that they said would happen if they did this and that is what really happened. Okay, yeah. Another what? Do I? I thought I'm aware. If I do, I don't know that I do. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. If I do, they got to tell me. I'll improv. Well, I don't know. Should I? I'll just finish this one and then we can figure it out later. Well, this is the last slide. You got to let me talk, man. Okay? Stop. You got to let me talk. It's the last slide. You got to stop. You got to stop. Stop. Let me talk. Okay? Yeah. No, I could have finished by now. You got to talk. Stop.
Stop. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So please let Mr. Ian Goldberg finish his presentation, and please later you're going to have the possibility to talk. Please. Okay?
Okay, so the point is they went through this process the first year with a smaller group of people. They saw that it really worked because it's a lot about like building trust, and you don't do that in one go. So they had this gradual process of building trust. When they saw that it worked like they said it would work, more people joined. And then what's happened with this process since it's continually grown. It's grown in this village, and then it's expanded to the neighboring villages. And they're now in a position where there are more buyers for the stuff they produce than they can produce. So it's an ongoing process, and it's been quite successful. And the point is that these people in these villages, they don't have to leave if they don't want to, because now they've got something they can do. Yeah, I'm not condemning, because some people maybe they want to migrate for other reasons, but they're not leaving strictly because they have no economic means of sustaining themselves. No? So the point is, this worked. The person here, that's her right there. This is a person. She's got a very kind of strong, positive vibe, kind of personality, and that really helped. I think it's the kind of person that, for one part, I kind of really love this energy she gives to things, but it also makes me feel inferior because I don't have this kind of bolt of sunshine bursting out of me like she seems to have. But I can still try and do my best, and so can you, and so can all of us. And that's the end of my presentation. I told you. Yeah. Okay.
So, thank you, Mr. Goldring, about showing us also the impacts on unemployment, also long-term impacts, and also giving us, thank you, also giving us an insight of how to, one part of a solution. Like you gave us a way how to maybe solve these problems also for the future, and also a strategy that we as young leaders or in our organizations that we can follow with many ideas of like this. What I liked was this barter method, where also, which for me means also going away from from the classical monetary system and finding out about new economical systems which could help. So I'd like to proceed to the next speaker, which, as you can see, it's not Dimitar Popov. It is still Dimitar. I would like to thank also. I would like to thank Dimitar Dimitrov, this person here. to my left, who you already know very well from the conference. Me and the project team really want to thank him for being here on this panel, because the speaker Dimitar Popov couldn't come, he cancelled, so he jumped in, and there he is, talking about retaining talents in Southeast Europe. So I guess it's going to be rather short, but the stage is still yours.
I bet we need something a bit shorter, because you guys are probably tired after several days of lengthy but fruitful and productive speeches, and indeed I couldn't have prepared anything longer, because I'm more surprised than you that I'm sitting here right now. I found out a few hours ago, but that's how it works here. When they cannot find Dimitar from Macedonia, they bring in Dimitar from Bulgaria, and this is how the name issue... It's applauses now, but do you know, this is how name issues arises, and then go blame the Greeks for that. I'll start with a more personal, more interesting, more personal fact related to me and the conference. Not everyone knows about it. It's actually quite personal information, because I only found out about this conference 2 years ago. Just after returning from abroad, from the UK, from Germany, from the States, where I spent 5 years of my lifetime. I might have been considered as a lost talent, but I decided to come back, and I'll explain why later, and I'll give you some success stories, some successful case studies of how this trend that we just heard of is changing in Bulgaria. So I found out about the conference from a girl which was part of the conference team 2 years ago, and she was very, very close to my heart also. So she comes to me and says, Dimitar, do you know about our conference that we're doing? Why don't you come to be part of it? And I said, okay, well, gladly. What panel do I participate in, and what type of speech do I hold? Well, wait for it. You're not qualified enough to be a panelist. You better first start with as a participant, then potentially the IPG member. But you see how the odds of the fate are turning, that this afternoon I'm fulfilling yet another dream of mine. Right. So there's another reason why I could relevantly speak more about retaining talents in our region, because I myself have been part of this huge wave of young people who made the move to the affluent West, where there is, goat on the streets paved while you're walking on them, and you can just get down and pick up some. That's the sort of stereotype that a lot of young people in the region live with. That once you go out abroad, once you go to the West, we have this saying in Bulgaria: you have already caught up God by his coat, right? And indeed, a lot of young people make this move. A lot of us go abroad because that's what we are taught from the very early age of our life. There is no future here. There is nothing we can do. There is absolutely lack of prosperity. There is corruption. There is lack of rule of law. This is the sort of stereotype that also the media quite frequently reimposes upon us young people, and is very, very harmful and very wrong. Right, so I don't want to speak too much about my lifetime abroad. It's maybe not even that special. I did graduate in London as a bachelor, then as a master's in one of the best universities in the world, indeed. And the most natural move, after spending some months working in Berlin, Germany, and New York City in the States, was to stay there, was to live abroad and make a large sum of money and enjoy life and enjoy happiness, and just take the fruits of my hard work and labor. And indeed, I had invested a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of work in these years into getting where I wanted to be. But live a happy life? No, this is the one single achievement in which I failed. I simply was not happy abroad. And I didn't even make the natural choice to come back. Things just happened to be that way. Maybe it was fate. Maybe I was just following my own natural predetermined path. I do not know. But I know that I'm not alone, because even today when I walk the streets of Sofia, that's what I do for a living, you know, I'm a free Sofia tour guide. There's another paradox. I gave huge sum of money to be able to study abroad, because unfortunately it's not for free, and I came back to Bulgaria to do free Sofia tours. So imagine how I look in the eyes of every fellow Bulgarian who I meet on the streets, and they're asking me, oh, what do you do now? Complete idiot, right? And probably in your eyes as well. But trust me, as I say, first what I do is not, I mean, it is a free service, but first it's not the only thing that I do, far from the only thing that I do. And second, even if it was the only thing that I did, it still would be enough for me to live a totally independent and, most important of all, happy life. I bet that I think I can bet on one very unfortunate development. If you didn't have your books with the program in front of you now, and I asked you what was the headline, the main title of this session, Sustainable Ideas, right? You might have forgotten it already, but the most sustainable idea in my head is to be wherever you want to be and live the prosperous, happy and fulfilled life that you want to, without the stigma that you have failed abroad and you have returned now as a loser to work for small money and you know, to live in a corrupt country. This is exactly the stigma which is the most harmful, which unfortunately not only the media reimposes, but we as actors in society are also reimposing with sometimes our attitude, our more negative attitude towards this phenomenon. And it is a question of attitudes indeed. I'm going to name several of the very successful case studies in Bulgaria which work in this dimension, in this direction, retaining talents. Right. It's one thing I learned: when the state is incapable to find a solution to a concrete challenge, it is the civil society or the private sector which might, you know, follow suit. I'm really glad we have a state representative with us here today, but indeed most of us are not members of government or of political parties. We are technically belonging to the civil society, right? And we are not powerless. Here in the Balkans, in this region, we're used to this mindset. Yeah, the state should give us, it should find a solution, it should be, you know, this huge force which is capable of anything. No, it's not. Like, state as an institution is also made of people who make mistakes, who are not God or goddess, and right, sometimes it's more about us, what we can do, and not so much about the state. So, the young people of Bulgaria, we realize that quite a big amount of us, at least of those who are educated, of those who speak several foreign languages, of those who are able to afford living abroad, right? The talent. And here is another issue. We're talking about retaining talents, but we're not talking about retaining everyone. So those people who would rather migrate to Spain, not to study, but to work on the field, do we care about them? Do we want to retain them either? These are questions which I want us to think about next time we're wording and phrasing our main topics. So never mind. The young people of Bulgaria realize that the majority of us go abroad, study and stay there, live a happy life ever after, whatever. And then what is left with the country? Where are the young people of tomorrow who can contribute to our economy, who can make things work, who can solve the fact that we are the most corrupt and poorest European Union member state? Yes, this is Bulgaria. Truth be told, these are statistics. So we decide to establish the so-called Bulgarian Career Forum. It was initially a completely voluntary activity from the bottom to the top, driven by us, those students who are already abroad. And what we do? We simply tried to attract a lot of companies from the private sector, a lot of active NGOs working in the field and in need of human resources. Even some state institutions like the Ministry of Labor in our country, in Bulgaria. We attract them, we sit together on the table. This is what you do. You gather all the stakeholders on the table. You set the issue and you offer them a solution, right? we started organizing annual forums in two big European cities, London and Frankfurt, because our estimations show that a huge number of Bulgarian students would either study in the UK or in the Federal Republic of Germany. So this annual forum, annual career forum, is a very simple thing. In the building of the embassy, different companies and different NGOs make a so-called fair, you know, an employment fair, because it's a win-win situation. Those Bulgarian-based companies and those NGOs are in need of talented, prepared workforce that is still struggling to find its path, you know, in the dirty streets of London or Frankfurt, and wants to come back, you know, because that's where you play on the emotional string, on the emotional part. This is something what Goran said earlier this morning, that we do have even the duty, what we have learned, what we have taken, what we have experienced in the best Western European or American colleges or Australian ones, then why not at some point go back to our country and implement what we've learned? Is that impossible? I do not think. I do not think that it's impossible, and I indeed see it every day in the street of my city, because I meet my fellow classmates, schoolmates that I haven't seen for years, and they decided that they were brave enough to make this move, go back to Bulgaria and start, you know, building a career in their respective field. Or, if it's impossible to build a career in your respective field, well, then there's nothing scary, nothing so frightening about just trying to acquire other skills and competences, because it doesn't matter at all what you have studied and what piece of paper you have in front. It's all about your skills. It's all about your competencies. It's all about you and your attitude. And skills you can build, even if you're 70 years old, it's never too late to qualify yourself, you know, to search for different areas of career development. It's not impossible. I see it. I did it myself, because I studied international relations and political science, and the most natural thing would have been for me to stay and work at the United Nations in New York. The most crazy thing is that actually I was able to do it, right? I had the chance. I could have done it technically on paper, right? I could have stayed in New York. I could have started working initially voluntarily for the Bulgarian embassy or for the United Nations. They have programs like this. I could have found where to live thanks to you know, my connections or anything, or my smile or anything like this. There is a chance, but I didn't want to. I wanted to go back. And if I do not want, because in my case I can work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of my country, but it's not so certain if I want to or not. I still haven't made up my mind. So I start pre-qualifying myself. I can speak several European languages. I know how to communicate with foreigners. I'm into history, into culture. I enjoy talking to foreigners, so why don't go out there and do the free Soviet tours? This is a project which is there for 7 years, completely independent, not supported by the state, not supported by the municipality, not supported by the private sector. It is run by 25 enthusiastic young people like me who believe in what they are doing and in the meaning of doing it. And not only does it bring us joy, fulfillment, smiles on our faces, on the faces of those who attend the tour, you can ask Anelia later, but it brings us, guess what? Profit. It's hard to believe, but it does. Because you've just noticed an industry like tourism. Next year, our city, Sofia, is going to make a record profit, the biggest profit it's ever made in tourism. So it's an opportunity. We are used to speaking about our countries, Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, Bosnia, Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania. You know how they used to call the old Ottoman Empire, technically the Balkan Peninsula, the sick man of Europe. We are the troubled land, right? We are Balkanized. We're the region full of problems. That's what they say. I say, turn problems into opportunities. The region full of opportunities. Probably the best thing that you learned from today is what social enterprise is. Now some of you are aware of it, probably all of you. Social entrepreneurship. This is the key. This is the key to all the problems out there, which you can turn into opportunities, not only beneficial for the entire society, but also profitable for those of you who are engaged in it. And yes, look for partners.
Dimitar?
Look for partners out there, look for the positive examples, and look for partners. Look for the success stories of Nemanja, who has been there in Pirot. He is the retained talent. Look at Traice and Miho, the retained talents here of Macedonia, of Kruševo, and now I know I'm going to be interrupted, which is perfectly fine and very polite from the organizer side. You know, you always get to interrupt the youngest one, right? Because that's the attitude that young people usually would get. Thank you very much.
Actually, I would be able to listen to you another 1 or 2 hours, and I would not get tired about it. Thank you very, very much for jumping into this session and holding this and motivating the people. Not only that you maybe have found happiness coming back, but also you're bringing happiness to your friends, hopefully, but at least here in this group, in the groups of in this group of participants. And sorry, I had to do this because now also the minister has to leave very soon. So I would say that we give the word to those who have questions to the minister directly, and then she can leave, and we continue with the questions. I would say 3 questions, and we can continue then.
Hello. Yeah, no. Okay, first of all, I wanted to say, Dimitar, that was very, very inspiring, and you said like so many things that I was thinking exactly the same. So that was amazing. And I wanted to take a point that Mr. Goldring said. I think it was very interesting what...
Elena, all questions first now addressed to the minister, please.
Okay, so...
Due to the time we have.
Okay, so basically... Okay, so I can ask after, because it was kind of... Well, it is for both, but... Yeah. You can go first.
Okay, then... yeah, you can pass the microphone.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your inspirative speech. Yeah, I have very simple question to Mrs. Mila Charovska. You know, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's easier to run a political party than to run a business. So I'm interested about the situation in Macedonia. Does political freedom leads to economy freedom or not? So very simple.
Very simple question. Absolutely, because there is no at all rule of law in Macedonia. You are probably well informed about this, but there is no independence in the courts and all these things. This means that the business climate is not very positive, because the businessmen somehow are scared to invest more and to grow their businesses. But we are trying as a new government to have a free atmosphere to invest, but also to have a clear rule of law, because this is crucial for the businessmen. And really it's easier to run the political party than the business company. Is the same situation, and that's why most of the people want to be politicians rather than businessmen. And most of the businessmen are part of the political parties, probably as in your country. But we are trying to change the situation.
Okay, so we can collect 2 questions or 3, like one there and Pete as well, and also yeah, there.
So first I would like to say a big thank you to all of you, and it was really amazing. I have several questions for the minister. Firstly, yeah, I was impressed by how many programs and fields you covered. And I would like to ask you, in the context of sustainability and strategic planning, how do you feel, what is your opinion about youth policy, how the youth policies are structured? Like in horizontal line, for example, it's like this in Bulgaria. Many ministries are responsible for different youth policies. or if they're all collected in a hub, like one ministry responsible for all of the youth policy making, because in Bulgaria we face some coordination issues. And also, talking about sustainability, what are the efforts of your ministry for the implementation of the sustainable goals for development? And have you got a voluntary wall?
I think we can give also space for other people.
Sure, I have one more question, please.
Yeah, I mean,
no, wait,
no.
Have you got social media others?
Hey, I said one question. You're filling the space. She has no time. Please. There one, and Pete then. Maybe we can. Is it okay if we collect 2 more questions?
I wanted to ask you to, actually, yeah, it's a combined question. As we are here sitting all together as representatives of youth organizations or individuals representing the causes of youth, I wanted to ask you, even to what extent, I mean, I'm delighted with the measures, that is certain, but even to what extent have youth been consulted on the measures? So have youth been involved in decision making about them? And second, will youth be involved in the implementation of the measures so that it's not just left to the government?
Okay. And one more question. Well, she was before, so please hand the microphone to her.
Hello. I just wanted to ask you, you never mentioned, you said that you created a platform and that you use it now in your government, but you never mentioned how did you create that platform and how did you manage to make it work for your government? Because in Greece we have the exact same problem, so I would really like to know if you could give me some more info about it. Thank you.
Yeah. The youth issue is horizontal issue in Macedonia, and Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Health, Ministry of everybody are connected with the youth and young people in Macedonia, but also there is an agency for youth and sport. This means that also there is an institution that needs to care about this group of people in Macedonia. And again, there is no sustainability of the policies because we have a strategy, we have the other policy documents, but there is no real implementation in practice. And we find that 11 years, we always talk about the young people, the previous government. Now we are just trying to have a few measures that will directly be created and implemented with the young people. We have I will respond to your question also. We have a national council, correct me if my English translation of this national council of youth in Macedonia. They are partners of the implementation, and they're also partners now of the Agency for Youth and Sport in Macedonia. And now we will have a credible partner that collect all the NGOs that are connected with young people, and they will suggest maybe how we can modify the measures. You say that you are that we have a good measures, but let's implement them, and maybe for 1 year you will come again in Macedonia and we will present our results. If the results are good, maybe we can share the best experience that we have on the Balkans. But if there is a problems, maybe together we can sit and revise the measures, because now we for 1 month just revise with a small consultations, and let's see what will happen now. This is the response to your if we invest in sustainable development goals. I'm also a UN person. I work a lot as a consultant for UN agencies, and please find maybe more practical issues that the government can invest in. Sustainable development goals is very big issue for our small countries, but we are absolutely contribute. If we employ young people, if we reduce the poverty in our countries, we can contribute to the sustainable development goals. But yeah. I think that the world didn't implement the Millennium Development Goals, then they just changed the name. And then now we have a Sustainable Development Goals, very sexy, but yeah, let's see. It's a time. Okay, and we have last question. What was that? Oh yeah, the Macedonian anti-poverty platform. Yeah, we just organized 80 organizations in Macedonia. They are somehow connected with reducing poverty, connected with the young people, elderly people, people with disability, homeless, women, and we organized them in one platform. After that, we said that there is no money in Macedonia that can be invested just in the platform, because there is a strong organization, but there is a weak organizations in Macedonia, and we collect all them. But we apply in European anti-poverty platform to be a full member, and we pay cotization for that, and they share with us 10,000 euros, and with 10,000 euros, we have just two activities on a national level, but very successful one. First one is creating the declaration of poor and socially excluded, and they say what they ask the government and parliament, what they need in our society to be better society for them. And the second one was the conference of the people that are poor and socially excluded, and they invite the politician and discuss with them how they can improve the policies and what are the needs of the people. And this, how to say, traditional activities of the Macedonian anti-poverty platform and the membership of the European one create the visibility of the platform. But the platform by themselves, they don't generate the money, they didn't produce anything, they're just advocate. And we start to talk about the minimum income in Macedonia in 2013, and now we have a party program where minimum income is mentioned. After the governmental program, now the new government has a minimum income in their program, and we find the money from the World Bank as a credit to invest in the minimum income. This meant that in 2019 we will have a minimum income in Macedonia as an activation program. And this means a lot for the Macedonian anti-poverty platform, that they get one issue, and this issue means transferring more money for the poor people, and they will succeed their advocacy plan in 2019. I started, and I say bye to this platform in 2013 when I became a president of the Committee of Social Policy in the Social Democratic Union in Macedonia. It's a political party. But I was the I didn't stop advocating. I just pushed my advocating in the political party, and now I'm just pushing my advocating in the government inside. This means that you need to invest in the people and to push them in the more structured way in the governments or different issues. If there is some, maybe one more, yeah.
So we have we give word to also one more person.
Okay. Yeah.
Or two. Is two
Okay,
also?
yeah, and
Biljana?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Dragana. I come from Belgrade, Serbia, and I also study social work and social policy. I really feel passionate about that topic, and I hope one day I will be in the position of making some changes as you are now. So since you're both a young person and a woman, from a position of a decision maker in your country, I'm sure that all the fellow participants here would be delighted to hear about your path. From the point when you were a student with a vision from some changes, to the point you became a person who actually has the ability and all the necessary tools to bring the vision into the reality. So therefore, what were the difficulties and how did you surpass them? What is your advice for all the young people and all the young leaders out here who are ready to go after that same path of making ideas come to reality? Thank you very much.
Okay, it's a nice question, and I know Mila since she was in her organization as a youth worker. So I'm really happy that we are now in this position. I know how much you are working on it, and giving one day, Friday, for a consultation with the people, it's really great thing, which is like great for the start. So I just wish you success in it. And my question was, what is the faster how to say, solution for the kindergarten problem? We know that it's just, I think, 11%. We have only 11% kids who can go to kindergarten? And the second, what is the faster way for the people, beggars, kids beggars on the streets?
What is the best recommendation from me as young person to the youngest? Maybe to trust yourself. I don't know why, but I can say that when I was a student, my professor said, don't be interested for every issue in social policy. Just connect with one issue, child or women or elderly people, and just build yourself in this position. I say no. As a student, I work with the sex workers, the drug users, young people that are on the streets, and all the risky groups in Macedonia that everybody just say, this is not the issue that we need to talk in the university about. And I just trust in myself. I don't know how and how I can recommend you, but it's important to trust that if you feel that you need to be connected with every issue that are in your in your scope, then you just go for it. Because there is this is the issue why it's like that. Because now I need to be a minister of the ministry with the broader portfolio ever that you can imagine. Because it's pensioners, kids, beggars, and all the citizens in Macedonia that are not covered with any system, they are now in the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy. My best recommendation is just trust in yourself and just go the way that is you're feeling that is okay. How we can solve the situation with the kindergartens? There is a issue this issue we talk with UNICEF, and there is a possibility to have 3 shifts of the 3 hours coverage with the pedagogy for every city and every rural area. This means that we will have a coverage of 95% of the children in Macedonia for 4 years from now. We will invest in the early childhood development centers, not in the kindergarten, because the kindergartens is mixing with a care and pedagogy. But now we will be focused on a pedagogy. Why? Because in between 3 and 6, if you are covered as a children with a pedagogy, you will have a better start in primary school and secondary school, and after that it's a better for the society because we will have a more economical growth. And this is really investment. And the care that is under the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, this means kindergartens from the previous system, 8 hours coverage, this is important just if we have more women on the labor market. And if we push the more women on the labor market, in this moment we have 50% of the women are not active. This means they are not asking for a job in this moment, but if we push more in the labor market, after that we will think also for the care part, who can care for our children. And child that are on the streets, this is the issue that I clearly say that I will not solve for 4 years, because it's connected with the poverty, it's connected with a specific system of how the parents needs to be educated and supported in their living, and the second thing must to be part of the kindergartens that are not, there is no infrastructure where they can be put it, one thing, and the other thing is that there is no homes for living of most of these children. This is very complex issue, and we are just, maybe we can move one step more for this issue, but honestly I say that this will not be solved in 4 years.
I'd like really to thank, in the name of everybody, that you took your time, Minister, and I guess you have to go now to the next meeting. I think we can applaud her for coming here. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. So we can continue, and yeah. But she doesn't need to tell where she comes from, does she? I think we can continue with the questions now addressed to Mr. Goldring, yes, and to Dimitar. Well, okay. So can we have a microphone for Elena, because she handed over the microphone at first, and then also maybe you can keep it. Keep it. because she's getting.
There's a second one here.
Okay.
So one person
But yeah.
Hello, hello, yes. I wanted to ask Mr. Goldring, because I think he raised a really important subject that actually we didn't really discuss that much in this conference, which was a change in the story of migration. Because I think that in a time where populism is actually attempting to close borders, it is essential that this happens in terms of economic sustainability, because if we think about it, Europe will be in a near future a very old continent with not many people actually being active, and in terms of the demographics, we will not have a big active part of the population. So I wanted to ask, how can you ensure, this sustainability in terms of globalization, and how can governments improve migration strategies? Thank you.
Well,
Wait, maybe we
okay,
can also
sure.
hear his question. Sorry, so that is like
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't. Can you hear me? Yeah. I couldn't ask actually a clarification to the minister, but still I want to share this because I feel a bit. It was a bit curious. I feel a bit uncomfortable by hearing that a member of government can say that the judiciary of her own country is not free and it's corrupted. If that happened, that was pretty surprising. No one raised that point so far. So actually, I wanted her maybe to make a clarification on that point, but I would appreciate any Macedonian, maybe also later, to clarify on how a member of government can say something like that. But then the question, going back to the main issue of the panel, that was very interesting, was Mr. Gosling mentioned keeping people active as a tool to tackle unemployment. So how do you think that sharing economy can address that issue? I was this morning looking on BlaBlaCar for a lift, but apparently there were no lifts available in the area. So I was pretty curious also to know how sharing economy like Airbnb, BlaBlaCar, Uber are spread here in the region, and maybe if youth unemployment can also be seen and tackled more as in an intergenerational compromise. The minister is also responsible for pensions, but pensions were never mentioned today. Aren't pensions also a big problem in tackling the issue of youth unemployment? Don't we need an intergenerational compromise, as, for example, Angela Merkel is seeking to have in Germany? Thank you.
Mr. Goldring, you want to first?
Okay, well, I'll start. What did he? Oh, he's writing. I didn't get a pen and pen. I was going to make notes. The short answer to your question is yes. Yeah, there needs to be it's a fundamental question if you're looking at, in the EU, the economic sustainability of all the pension system. You have something called a dependency ratio, which is how many people are working to support how many people are not working. Mostly they look at pensions, but it can also be young people or people who have a medical problem or something, yeah? The bottom line is that in Europe, this ratio is shrinking remarkably. It's already shrunken quite a bit. So less and less people working to support more and more people, yeah? That obviously gets very, very difficult. And of course, it also means that you need those people who are working to be working at the most productive possible way to be able to pay for so much more. And this is a key problem, and it will be playing out over your lifetime. This is like between now and 2050, it's supposed to get a sort of a breaking point, yeah? So yeah, it's not even a moral issue, it's a purely practical reason. Like the pension system simply will not work, it'll just blow up. So old people who don't like migrants and so on, you should mention that they're paying for their pension and so on. So it's a thing that needs to be pointed out. And also the need to activate young people. What I wanted to get at with the hysteresis with unemployment. Now obviously when you have people who are unemployed, you want to think about getting them a job, and that's logical, right? But there's more to it than that. What kind of job are they going to have? What kind of capacity to realize their long-term potential will they have? And that's an issue for them as individuals, and it's also an interest for society as a whole, yeah? Because that reverberates on the society as a whole and its well-being in a number of ways, including paying pensions and so on. with the BlaBlaCar, yeah. Covering the different possibilities for keeping people active. I mean, things like BlaBlaCar and other similar things I think are really good. Yeah. Obviously, it's the kind of thing where no one thing is the thing. It's going to have to be a kind of mixed salad of multiple elements, and there has to be a certain creativity and support. I'm afraid the problem with hysteresis that you probably can't completely eliminate it, but what you have to do, like in medicine, you talk about palliative care, is that you do the most you can possibly do to reduce it. Ideally, it never happens in the first place, but if it does have to happen, it should be as little as possible. And that's something that needs to be thought of at the same time that we're thinking how to get people out of the unemployment. We have to think, how do we affect the experience of unemployment they're having while they're having it, which is something people often find uncomfortable to talk about, particularly politicians, because it kind of sounds like they're failing, and so it's not something they want to talk about. And this also goes back to the issue of immigration. You often are talking about people who need to migrate for opportunity or to seek opportunity, and how to equip them to be successful at it is often uncomfortable for politicians to talk about as a subject, but it needs to be talked about because it's just a simple truth. Yeah. Now, if you look at a country like Macedonia and they're saying, well, we have this hemorrhaging of our population, we can't give them jobs. I get that. It's not difficult to get, yeah? And of course they want to solve that. But anybody with, a minimum understanding of how our world is understands that in the next 2 or 3 days, that's not going to be solved. And so, of course, they have to work on those structural issues, but at the same time, there has to be an approach to these things that are happening now. And so if people are going to be migrating, and also turn that around. It's often presented as a story of defeat for these people. Or sometimes as a kind of neo-colonial. I was in Portugal and someone was saying to me, these are our young people. They can't be going away. But, I mean, it's their life. What is this? This I own you people, yeah? And if people are ever really, really concerned about not having enough young people, like if one day in Macedonia, and I really hope, my crystal ball is really muddy, so I can't really see what's going to happen. It's not good. But if Macedonia gets to the happy problem of having too much opportunity for the population it has to fill and needing more people, you won't have a hard time getting more people to come. Maybe they'll come from Ukraine or I don't know where. But if you get to a situation where you can create opportunity for people, that tends to solve itself, yeah? So just worry about getting there. In the meantime, you've got a very different problem, people that need a situation now. And if you take someone when they're 22, and just say, well, wait 10, 15 years and do nothing, and then you'll be 37, and then your life will start. Well, that's not really a good proposition, is it? A whole number of, it's like a waste, we could be here for a month, explaining why that's bad. So there has to be a moral look at doing something. I saw recently it was a politician, I think from Detroit, Michigan, and Detroit's an area in the States which has had economic dismantling where the industry there has collapsed and people are leaving. And what he was saying, well, people keep criticizing us and these local authorities for all these people going to other parts of the country where there's more employment opportunity. And he said, well, there's that, but also these people are going to these places and getting jobs and being successful. For why not look at, for example, our educational systems, how they've been successful in equipping these people to do that, yeah? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it's the necessary, the practical, and the moral way forward. And then you talked about the larger issue of globalization and migration. That's a pretty big topic, and I'm only one guy. It's a huge thing. There's a lot of, as you know, populist demagoguery about that. There's a lack of education. In countries that are aging, particularly somewhere like Germany is a key example, yeah? Germany is an aging country, and they need migrants, yeah? Of course, there's the issue of how to get them qualified and able to function in the economy and so on, yeah? But they're aging rapidly, and this is happening all over Western Europe, this accelerated aging. So if they want their system to work, they have to find a way to resolve that, and that has to be presented in a constructive way. One key to presenting this, when you see countries that are less hostile to migrants, you tend to see that the public perceive, for example, in Canada recently, they've taken in 36,000 refugees from Syria. And I think that the number in the U.S. is 100 or something really ridiculous, yeah? Yet in the U.S. they're caught up in this whole panic of, this Muslim horde is coming here, they're going to murder us all, right? Well, you don't see this at all in Canada. And part of the story is that the government has demonstrated to the population that this was being done in a controlled, organized way. People were coming in, they were documented, there was a selection, they're coming in airplanes, we know who they are, we know where they are, we know what they're doing. And it's presented, and these are like families and people with kids and stuff, so people see a very non-threatening image, and there isn't a sense of just things being out of control. Now, I was recently in Austria, and there's this nice small town, I won't bother mentioning the name, but it's a nice place, a small place, yeah, sort of in the middle of Austria. And they were saying, well, on one hand, these migrants, we represent an important issue in globalization, but this small town, they had like at dawn, more people than were in the population of the town, just showing up and walking through the middle of the town, and no one knew who they were, where they'd come from, and they just sort of appeared. It was like something out of one of these Western movies where there's like the one street in the town and people looking out the window at these people walking down Main Street, and they were just there. And plus the Austrian in particular, they're used to a certain organization in their lives, yeah? But this would be unsettling, I think, for most communities, and I don't think it actually reflects badly on these people. They're just saying, well, we didn't know what to think, these people. They just showed up, and there were like more of them than any of us in the town, and what's going on, right? And the public authorities weren't able to create a sense of there being a plan or some organization to all this, and if these people had been presented with something a little more organized and decent, which also might have been better for these migrants, like they would still go through, but some sense of organization, maybe give them buses or something, yeah, if that's what they were going to do, sort of work out. There are a lot of things that you can complain about, and we could argue about how to do that in a practical way. I think what remains almost unarguable is that could have been done much better, yeah, and that's part of the, you'll never make everyone happy, but part of creating a sense of that we can handle it, that we're not overwhelmed, is public authorities creating some sense of order and control. I don't mean repression, like you beat them back with dogs, but you create, this is being handled somehow, and people, don't see everything, well, what is this, yeah? And of course, there are a lot of other things we could talk about, but, we'll move on to the next.
Hello?
Maybe use the chance to have this remark that you made for the minister who just left. So if nothing else in this tornado of words, at least to act. Yeah, I can act as a lawyer for the Macedonians. Thank you very much. And in moments like this, I remind why I love watching South Park. But never mind. Okay, so one thing we know about democracy. What is democracy? It is separation of powers. Technically speaking, you have the executive power, the government, which just left. You have the legislative power, the parliament, which drafts the laws. And you have the judicial power, right? These two, in the ideal democracy scenario, these two powers should be separated from each other and independent from each other. Technically speaking, I do not see anything wrong with someone from the government saying that the judicial power is not necessarily independent, especially if that is true. And actually, to give you a concrete example, I would be very happy if someone from the American judicial system go out on TV and says, there's a problem about our president. For example, Mr. Trump might be dependent on foreign forces. There is an argument like this, right? So I do not necessarily know what the situation in Macedonia is like, but in its eastern neighbor, Bulgaria, I would be extremely happy if someone from the government had the guts to finally say that our judicial system is corrupt and related to mafia and oligarchs, because this is exactly the case. And there is scientific data to it. These are not empty words. The most basic research could give you a proof to that. So I imagine that the reason why she mentioned this must be close to this one. But there's nothing wrong about this technically, because the powers are separated, and I think there's someone from behind who could clarify it. Tale, maybe even more. Thank you.
So I think, does it? Hello. I think here we have somebody who can add something to this. I think it's good to have also from one from Dimitar and then also from one Macedonian an answer.
Okay, she said that there is also not solution from the government for the young beggars on the street, and which is also a very huge problem. I would ask you simply by saying, if we didn't change the government now, probably me, the minister, some people here, and many people who are now in the government would be killed in prison or outside the country. That was the only thing. So for me, there was not other solution. So as you know, we had like many people who are out, and we had also fight in the parliament. They went to kill the prime minister now, so he was bleeding. So imagine, we were dealing with 11 years with mafia. And that mafia was not only in this country, let's be honest. That mafia was connected with the mafia in Europe. And many people were silent. We had many, not just Russia, also Europe. We had many people who came here as ambassadors telling us, you should fight for your rights, yes, but in the back they are making silent agreements with them. And telling us before elections, it's not the way. People are manipulated through the medias, through money, through many things. They were employed. Imagine we had 80 people employed in the government who were coming to the government only one day in the week, and they were just signing that they are there. Imagine 80 people. All of them were with high school. And we have so much people who have education, they didn't have chance. I didn't have chance to get any fund from the government here. And there was like also many people were put on the media as a traitors. So what I'm saying that is actually, it's not only our problem. So what I'm like trying to say also, like if we can help you later in this Europe, now it's the moment that European Union should help to us. Why? Because yes, it's corrupted, the system is corrupted. We need to have really serious reforms, and these reforms are painful, these reforms are expensive, and these reforms require know-how. So that's it shortly.
Thank you very much. I would say we have 3 last questions, because also we are running out of time now. And so 3 persons with each 1 question. Raise your hands, please.
It was just statement to clarify the statement that we
Okay, yep. Yeah, just if it's a short statement, then please add that.
Okay, yeah.
And then
yeah, it's working, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you were aware, but there was like that huge scandal in Macedonia with those eavesdropping conversations that leaked public, because somebody from the Ministry of Defense, I think, gave the conversations to the public. And so there were like judges which were in the like main house who directly had conversations with like the political leaders in our country, and like the conversation were something like, yeah, we should put that guy in jail, or yeah, we should save that guy. Like he didn't do anything, he just killed 2-3 people, like nothing major. So those conversations leaked public, and everyone was allowed to hear them, and that's just a simple explanation. Thank you.
Just to clarify my position, I didn't intend to provoke anyone, and I'm falling in love with this country, and I actually wanted to know more about, to putting in context the statement. Absolutely friendship towards Macedonia.
Hand the microphone to Sotir, please.
Okay, so I have a question for the Bulgarian version of Dimitar Popov. Regarding your story, which was for me very much inspirational, motivational, do you think that some of us that are not really passionate about further steps in formal educations, faculty and going beyond that, do you think that it is enough and we should proceed with our ideas, with our passion, with our enthusiasm, and not be conformist and try to be part of that academic area? Do you think that we can succeed following your way, but instead not having that high level of formal education? Thank you.
Let's collect also. Yes, also one question from Metodia.
Okay. I would like to say sorry to Dimitar because of the cutting of his speech. For me was very interesting and motivational, but I don't know why about the program issues. Our program part of the team decide to run a little bit with the time, and I like a project coordinator want to say sorry to to Dimitar, and we will extend this session until the question will be ended.
First of all, thank you, Tosho. There was absolute no need to apologize. I am also part of the IPG team. I'm also co-organizing, and I do perfectly realize all the reasons behind that. Sotir, back to your question. First thing that I've noticed from my experience is that even people who have graduated from the top class world universities in the United States or the United Kingdom, they are not necessarily more capable and better prepared than someone who has graduated the Sofia University or the University of Belgrade, the University of Skopje, the University of Pristina. Having a diploma from the like a top class world ranked institution does not mean that you're more capable, right? It means that you have access to better infrastructure, to much more books, to much more data, digitalized data, like softwares you cannot even imagine. It means that you could meet professors from like the top class academic life who've written the best books. It means that you can network with a lot of influential business people, but this does not make you more capable. What makes you more capable comes from your self-initiative, exactly from your passion to do stuff that you care about, stuff that you really want to see fulfilled and come true. And I want to make a flashback to last year. Remember last year in the in one of the panels which I was moderating, again on youth entrepreneurship, and here we had Mr. Nathan Korshaw. Mr. Nathan Korshaw, who you know has been active in this region, NGO worker, a very, very magnificent guy, originally from the States, if I am not wrong. This guy does not have high degree. He publicly confessed that he never went to university. Maybe he did, but he never really graduated, right? And you see where he's now. There are tons of examples like this. I have it in my own professional life. I'm working in a non-governmental organization which is presided by someone who did not finish his degree in law. Because at the 5th year of his study, just before getting the diploma, he realized it's nonsense. It's all about what he is passionate for. Okay, let's not go to the extremes. Diplomas you need, education you need, but you can do fully fine without that as long as you are proactive, as long as you have the right mindset, the right attitude to life and to people around you, as long as you do be brave enough to embrace social entrepreneurship or other sorts of entrepreneurship, for example. It's totally possible, and there are tons of examples like this.
There is also one question from the back row and also from Nemanja. And Anelia? Anelia, you want as well? She just raised her hand because of diplomas. Because of what? I couldn't hear, sorry.
I just want to make a comment. I mean, Dimitar mentioned the diploma, and for the higher ranks, of course, it's needed, but when it comes, because we were discussing with my colleagues on the conference about higher education, if the diploma is really needed for certain jobs. The example, which is true example from my home country, Montenegro bar, and the bar has right now and had back in Yugoslavia the greatest port for the ships 300 meters long. And the golden area or the port of Bar was when the chief of the port was a guy who had only higher education, but he went back from Spain and he had a lot of contacts. He didn't have higher education about the economics or maybe, I don't know, the engineering, but he knew how to operate and organize managing the port. So sometimes in life, the higher education diploma is not always the guarantee you'll be successful and you will know how to organize and to cooperate with things. I apologize, maybe it's not an appropriate comment, but I just want to say that. Thank you.
It's not working. Now it's working. Okay. I just want to state something, and then I have a question for Mr. Ian. What Dimitar said about the importance of university degrees and those kind of things, I have one thing that I wanted to say on the last session, but I didn't. But since we are already in that topic, I think it should be mentioned. And I would exclude from this doctors, biologists, psychologists, and all other people in the similar. Anyway, for the maybe 70% of the jobs which will be available in the future, you cannot learn those things in the universities. That's one thing that it's important to say. Maybe it will, we will change the education and it will be able for us to learn that, but those things are mostly connected to the digital world, new technologies and those kind of things, and they are moving so quickly then when you enter the university and when you finished, it's like you are 15 years late. But what you can do, you can actually, if you want, let's say, to study marketing or something else, you can actually look over the books on the internet of all universities that are teaching marketing, and actually find those books, even some books that are more reliable than that, and actually learn all of that. One of the most important things connected to that is to find somebody who can be your mentor. That's even more important than university degrees when it comes to new jobs that will be offered in the future. And moving back to the question for Mr. Ian, I read that you did a lot with the development of the local communities. And since in a few days we have another conference which is connected to the creative industries in the local communities, I have a question for you. What are your recommendations for development of the local creative industries in a small environment, small communities, if you have some?
Okay. Well, the first thing would be to start with the kind of stock taking or auditing of the situation of that place, yeah? Because before you start giving these recommendations, you don't want to, maybe they've already done it or there's something they need to do before, so you really have to take a look at what their starting point is, yeah? Because that's always going to be from where you extrapolate the rest. Then a very good standard thing to do, that's always the right thing to do, is to do a benchmarking of what similar communities in a comparable situation have done. Because that's, in a logical world, everyone would do that. And then from there, you'd really have to know sort of what it is that you need. Like, are they developing like local crafts, or is it winery, or what is it? Probably, if you're looking at a European context, you'd get involved in some kind of exchange activity that was pertinent to this thing that you're doing, which of course you don't know what that thing is until you first settled down and looked at what your situation is. But that would be, the obvious generic sort of way of proceeding that I would think of.
If someone can hand the microphone to Gatsa. Dimitar, did you want to?
Yeah. Okay, Dimitar, thank you. Because I have a similar story. I lived in the US, came back from Malaysia a couple years ago, was offered to work for Google and all that egoistic jazz. And then I came back to Serbia and I was like, what the heck am I doing here? Novi Sad is kind of difficult for me to live there, but I said, okay, if I'm helping communities around the world, what the hell did I do for my community in Serbia? So thank you for reminding me why the heck I stayed in my beloved country. However, I don't know if you've seen the video, Simon something about millennials, that went viral. I'm pissed about that video. I think it's complete, may I swear, bullshit. He's talking how we millennials really want some impact. And he's talking about that in a very degraded way. And I completely disagree with that. I agree, we want impact because older generations completely screwed up our planet. Values are non-existent everywhere on this planet. I'm behind that statement. However, I truly believe that we will change the way businesses work. We will change politics. We will change everything. We, the millennials, will change everything and bring back the values we stand for. That's what I kind of want to ask you, all of you, whatever you do in life, because my definition of success completely changed when I saw my own mother, who was high-positioned director in a bank, go through harassment at work, which was completely, I couldn't even believe that. I want to ask you to never forget the values that you stand for right now, that if you are ever in a position of power, remember at least this conference and whatever you have done in the civil society sector. And I'm very happy to see that you guys have a minister that comes from youth work. It's so empowering, and we need more people because we are more sensitive to issues. We listen and we develop competences that if you don't go through the NGO sector, most likely you will not be so aware of everything that is going on. Because materialistic things are just bullshit. I may have an iPhone, Luca, sorry. I may like Apple, but I can live with it. I lived in Malaysia without hot water, without a shower, without an AC, nothing, with really low pay. I managed. So just remember what you stand for now and stand for it in 20 years. I will check, I promise. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gatsa. Talking about planets, I am a biologist. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the only biologist on this conference and also on the last. Now we were having this panel about sustainability, and different people see different ways of sustainability and means. And I have also a question that you can address now or later regarding sustainability in the means of nature resources, or rather exploitation of and over-exploitation of our resources, and looking at our waste society. I've seen people also on this conference filling their plate and then leaving it half full to go to the waste, for example. We are acting as we would have not only this planet, this Earth, but as we would have 3, 4, 5 Earths in our backpack, and take them out as soon as our resources here are depleted. And in this means, I would ask both of the speakers on your opinion about that, and more important, how you could relate with your presented field, like especially how you could combine this also with the nature and the resources that we have and that are limited. And I think Dimitar maybe.
Yes. Ladies first, and this is why I will first address Gatsa's question, although I didn't necessarily took it as a question much, but more as a statement. Okay, that's great. One thing we have in common. The guy from Bulgaria and the girl from Novi Sad. We are the success stories of those who studied abroad, worked for Google or UN, and then came back to their home countries to do good because we stand for values. Perfect. Perfect. No need. But the biggest issue here, is how do you translate this success story of ours to other people who have not been so privileged? That's why I made this point. We're talking about retaining talent. Is talent all we care about? Do we not realize that there are other people who have not been able to acquire skills and talents because they come from different background, because they have not enjoyed the same starting point? I might sound like a communist, but I'm not. I'm anti-communist, actually. But I do believe that everyone deserves an equal start in life. Right? This is the liberal motto, and I do believe that we need to have the right attitude towards life. We need to keep these values that you're talking about. This is the most important thing. Yes, but we are a minority, I'm sorry. We are in a bubble. We are this small percentage of young people who think like this, who act like this, who look like this, with these values and with this attitude. The biggest challenge is, how do you inspire those who are out there, those who have not had the same chance that me and you have had to call ourselves success stories? This is the biggest challenge, and this is one of the most important end results that I want to see from this conference. Indeed, as an organizer, and now even as a panelist, that's what we should think for. And this also goes back to sustainability, because our bubble here means nothing if it doesn't grow, if it does not include other people. Even the smallest, simplest message that you could convey to someone else and convince him that it means a lot to be proactive and to create opportunities to seek for them, to associate with like-minded people and look for solutions. Just one single person with the smallest simple message to change something. That's what matters. That's what we should strive for.
It's more dramatic than anything I'm going to say, but I'm not a millennial, so, you know. If I were to tie it with my presentation today to keep it sort of pertinent, and this idea of sustainability, you're kind of talking about mixing a sense of what you're doing in the short term with what that has to do with what the long term is going to be. That's more or less the general line of it, yeah? Well, if I were to, because there's a lot of it with sustainability, it becomes metaphor. It might begin with the environment, but then people talk about it in economic terms or whatever terms you want, or some psychological thing. So you do whatever you want with it. The applicable metaphor to the gist of the presentation I gave you today was the need to combine an understanding for long-term issues and short-term issues, and the play between these two. That they should be both their own condition, but they're interacting amongst themselves. And when you're thinking about one, that should feed into how you're thinking about the other. And that would be part of a sustainable way of doing pretty much anything. If I could add something off topic, we were talking before about the minister and the corrupt judges and this. I just took it, this is pretty subjective because what do I know, but I took it as a sign of respect that she was honest with us. So that's just my way of looking at it.
Yeah, I would call this then a session. Yeah.
Do you hear me? Oh, okay. So I'm not that nice as our coordinator. I just want to say that the coffee break will be short. It will be only 10 minutes. You will have time to grab a coffee, go to the toilet, the facilitators to prepare themselves, and we are starting with the workshops.
So, I would like to thank you for your attention. I would like to thank also the two remaining speakers. It was a very lively conversation. Can I have guys? Is it? I mean, okay. You have 10 minutes of coffee break. 1 more minute. It doesn't make a difference. So, thank you for listening and making it a really lively conversation. And it was also for me an honor to have these to see also sustainability from a different point of view or from different point of views. Also me in this case, I was born in Germany, but with origins in the Balkans, and I'm happy to be here and also show my story of, maybe let's not say success yet, but I mean my story of action, what I'm doing, what I'm encouraging people to do, and what I think I have maybe also achieved with some of you. So I think what we can take is that also what Dimitar said, that just do it, just do whatever you want, and it will be whatever makes you happy, and it will make also the people around you happy, and this will follow up and enlarge the bubble. Thank you very much and enjoy your coffee.